Thanks for staying with us. I'm Eric Bolling in for Bill O'Reilly tonight. In the Unresolved Problems segment tonight, here's some news you won't hear if you listen to the liberal mainstream media. In a matter of days, America will hit our $15.19 trillion debt ceiling limit again. That will prompt the Obama administration to ask Congress for more money, your money. In fact, he wants $1.2 trillion more of your money. Look, I'm a true small government conservative, so I have to ask these questions. Is it right that we carelessly sign over trillions of dollars to the government? Is it fiscally sound? Is it patriotic? Roll tape of then Senator and candidate Barack Obama on that very issue.
The problem is that the way Bush has done it over the last 8 years is to take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt from $5 trillion for the first 42 presidents. Number 43 added $4 trillion by his lonesome, so that we now have over $9 trillion of debt that we are going to have to pay back. $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. That's irresponsible. It's unpatriotic.
So it was unpatriotic a couple of years ago, but what, necessary today? Partisan politics at its worst, folks. By the way, Obama has added $4.5 trillion in debt in just 3 years as president, the rate under George Bush. Joining us now to analyze from Washington, Jonathan Collegio, the Director of Communications for the American Crossroads, a Republican group, and with us in studio, Bernard Whitman, a Democratic strategist. Jonathan, let me start with you. Mr. Obama was very quick when he was running for president to point the finger at George Bush, talking about $4 trillion added over an 8-year span. Meanwhile, in 3 years, Obama's added more than that number onto the debt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of reminiscent of when the president, when he was a senator from Illinois, he had voted against extending the debt ceiling, if you remember that, multiple votes in Congress when he was a senator, and then he came back to Congress when he was president and asked them to extend the debt ceiling. But I don't think the president wants a fight over this. I mean, I think that since the stimulus passed in 2009, there's really been an absence of any kind of coherent economics and job policy coming out of the White House. And what we've seen, especially recently, is we're not even seeing the economists dishing out the economic policy. It's coming from the political guys in the West Wing and from his campaign operatives in Chicago. I mean, last week we heard from David Axelrod, who's the chief campaign strategist for the Obama campaign, giving out the economic policy of the administration. I mean, can anyone even name the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors anymore? They're in full-blown campaign mode right now.
It'd be difficult for him to start dealing with this during his Hawaiian vacation. He's on his 90 or 96 round of golf. Bernard, what about it? He was pointing fingers at George Bush in 2006, 7, and 8 about the debt. Meanwhile, 2011, 2012, now he needs more money. He needs a blank check.
The biggest single impediment to our economic recovery is the GOP leadership. Look what happened just to try to get a $1,000 payroll tax cut. The GOP leadership almost sabotaged their entire party by being so intransigent. And I will tell you that we went through a scorching debate over this 4 months ago. I mean, I don't think anybody's memory is that short. That roiled the financial markets, that cost us our AAA rating. We got a deal that, unfortunately, I think was the best deal that we could get, and it's appropriate. We've got to lift it. The deal is a promise to our creditors that we pay our bills. This is shared responsibility between Congress and this president, and what we absolutely need to do is a mixture of spending cuts and tax increases. The president's been willing to do that. The president's been willing to do that. This Congress has been unwilling to do that.
Hang in there, Bernard. Jonathan, somehow, the White House turned the dial to credit for keeping taxes lower. How in the world did they win that perception that they were for lowering payroll taxes and looked like the right was holding up a tax decrease?
Well, I think that what the House Republicans were trying to do on the policy side was actually right on. They wanted to extend the payroll tax for a year, not 2 months. I mean, you can't create tax policy 2 months at a time. A 2-month extension of the payroll tax certainly wasn't going to create any jobs. It's not like an employer is going to make a hiring decision based on a 2-month tax extension. So I think their hearts were in the right places. The problem is that the president has a huge microphone. I mean, when he started going after Boehner and the Republicans and they were unable to respond with a good message, I think that's when they lost their footing and they ended up cabling. It wasn't a good policy. I mean, it's better than letting the taxes increase, but they really should have found a way to extend the payroll tax cut for a year instead of that 2-month extension.
Hang in there, guys. Take a listen to a new Newt Gingrich Super PAC ad that's airing now. Listen.
The Republican establishment wants to pick our candidate. When a principal conservative took the lead, they outspent Newt Gingrich 20-1, attacking him with falsehoods. Conservatives need someone who's fought for us. Newt balanced the federal budget, reformed welfare, cut taxes, and created 11 million new jobs. Newt will take on radical judges and fight against abortion. Don't let the liberal Republican establishment pick our candidate, Newt Gingrich.
You know, Bernie, the left must be just thrilled at all the infighting going on in the GOP. Meanwhile, Mr. Obama with 8.6% unemployment, 44 million people on food stamps are going, boy, I'm glad they're not picking on me right now.
Oxymoron, liberal Republican, that's not an endangered species. That species is extinct. It was killed and eaten by its own party. And you talk about a principled conservative. What principled conservative would take 1.6 million from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to act as a shill? I mean, this ad is a complete joke. Winning our future must have a very short memory, because the last time I checked, when Newt Gingrich was on the national stage, he shut down the government and got President Bill Clinton reelected. So if that's the record that he wants to run on, I say bring Newt on.
Well, we just heard Dick Morris tell us that he was in part responsible for the budget, the deficit going from negative to a positive. Jonathan, talk to us a little bit about that division between the Republican Party, the conservatives, the establishment Republicans and the conservative Republicans. Is there too much of a divide to really coalesce behind one candidate and beat Barack Obama?
I mean, I think it's exaggerated by the news media. What Gingrich's strategy here is to become the anti-establishment conservative. This is a strategy that, when it works big. I mean, this is Reagan's strategy in 1976 and 1980. Pat Buchanan actually won the 1996 New Hampshire primary over Bob Dole using this strategy. So it works. But what you see when a lot of these candidates like Newt, when they catch fire real quick and their approval rating goes up to 40%, what usually is happening here is the voters are being exposed to the positives of the candidate, but they haven't yet been exposed to the negatives of the candidate. And for 2 weeks after Newt really peaked in early December, he didn't respond to a lot of the attacks that were coming from Ron Paul, from Rick Perry, and from Mitt Romney. I think at this point it may be a good ad. The problem is whether or not it's too little, too late. One thing I would like to say real quick, though. When we're talking about Mitt Romney having that 25% level of support across the country, I actually view it as more of a floor of his support than a ceiling, which is the way most people are talking about, because built into that 25% of support for Mitt Romney are all the people that know everything that's negative about him. There's nothing new that's going to come out about Mitt Romney.
No
so
question.
I get it more of a floor.
You'd still like to see it pushing 35, 40% going into some of these important
a lot of room to grow.
Last word, Bernie.
You know, I have to say that it's very scary with this negative ad. It shows that Newt Gingrich, pro-Newt Gingrich forces are terrified, because negative ads typically don't play very well in Iowa, and it shows that the anybody but Romney team is desperate to get anyone else nominated besides Mitt Romney, and ultimately, I think, in the process, will re-elect President Obama.
We'll have to leave it there, Bernard and Jonathan. Thank you guys so much. Up next, we'll take you back to Iowa, where we'll hear from a political insider about who really has the best shot to win in the Hawkeye State. We'll be back in a moment.